I think also the public-private distinction is different and culturally specific. And what's public and what's private in some places. For example, I've had students say that they want to talk about, sexual relations, and people say, oh, that's very private. And I want to say, well, no, actually, in that context, it's very public. Sexual relations is what you talk about publicly. I mean, everybody talks about everybody's sexual relations. That's the whole point of the community. That's why you talk with somebody in the community. So there are places where the boundary between what's private and what's public is very different. Now, the only way to know that is to get somebody who actually knows the area or is sensitive to these questions, or for the person, as they do the fieldwork, to change. And I think what we have to have is an ethics process that recognizes that the deeper you go in your fieldwork, the clearer those boundaries become. And so you actually will change your procedures as you go through the field project. I realize I can't ask about these things. This is not appropriate. One of the things, for example, that became very sensitive in my project was asking about people's histories of where they had learned. All right, because they were lying, and they were lying for very important reasons about who had been their master, who had been their teacher, where had they been disciples, and they would dispute each other's claims to these sorts of things. So I realized that an area which I had not recognized would be ethically fraught became ethically fraught. Which version I would write of that person's bio was very important, because I would become a legitimating stamp on a claim that was contentious in the community. So that's the kind of ethical question you cannot anticipate until you actually start doing the fieldwork. And so I think we need to arm our students and our junior researchers with the skills to begin to think about these things in an ongoing way, not just to clear a hurdle and to get approval, but to keep asking questions. How is the fact that I'm writing this down going to affect the community? How is the fact that I'm freezing the current relationships into a permanent form going to influence the way people can negotiate things that they need to negotiate later on? Gatekeeping, for example, is usually a staged process in fieldwork. How am I doing? Oh, good. That is, researchers are gradually led into more and more places. So, for example, we're frequently asked to provide a letter from an organization saying that you can work there. And sometimes, I don't know what to do with that request. For one thing, some of the places that I send students, they don't respond to emails to the organization. They simply don't. Until you physically show up. I have this problem with the University of the South Pacific. It's not even, I cannot get things out of them until I actually physically show up in people's offices and say, I'm here, and I need that letter now, or else I can't get this money released for my field work, for my field school, So I think we have to recognize as people who enforce these guidelines that we have to realize there's some flexibility, not to let students off the hook or researchers off the hook, but to recognize that they frequently have to negotiate different channels to get the same outcome.